The designer heels clicked against the marble floor of Berkeley University's grand auditorium as my sister Victoria strutted past me without so much as a glance. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, and her custom graduation gown, the one our parents had spent $3,000 on, made every other graduate look like they'd shopped at a thrift store. Me? I was wearing a rented gown that smelled faintly of mothballs and had a small tear near the left shoulder that I'd tried to hide with a safety pin. "Samantha Williams," Victoria announced to her circle of admirers, not bothering to lower her voice, "is going to embarrass our entire family today. Look at her sitting there, in that pathetic outfit." I pretended not to hear, clutching my phone tighter as I tried to focus on the congratulatory text from my roommate Maya. But Victoria wasn't done. "I mean, seriously, how did we even come from the same gene pool? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." The laughter that followed felt like knives. And this was just the beginning. The Berkeley University graduation ceremony was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. 4 years of working 3 jobs, living on ramen noodles, and studying until my eyes burned had led to this moment. I'd graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business administration and computer science, something I'd accomplished entirely on my own through scholarships and sheer determination. Victoria, on the other hand, had coasted through her marketing degree with daddy's money and a string of tutors who did most of her work for her. "Victoria Williams, graduating with honors," the dean announced as my sister glided across the stage to thunderous applause from our parents' section. When my name was called 10 minutes later, the applause was noticeably quieter. I could see my parents, Robert and Patricia Williams, sitting in their reserved front row seats, clapping politely but without the beaming smiles they'd worn for Victoria. My father was already checking his Rolex, probably calculating how quickly we could get to the expensive restaurant Victoria had chosen for her celebration dinner. After the ceremony, families gathered on the manicured lawn for photos and congratulations. Victoria was surrounded by what looked like a professional photography crew, complete with reflectors and multiple camera angles. Her boyfriend Derek, a trust fund kid whose family owned half of Napa Valley's wineries, had flown in a photographer from Los Angeles just for the occasion. I stood awkwardly by myself near an oak tree, watching other families celebrate. Maya had graduated the day before and was already on a plane to her new job at Google. My other friends were scattered across the country, starting their own new chapters. "Samantha," my mother's voice cut through the crowd. "Come over here for family photos." I walked over to where Victoria was posing like she was on the cover of Vogue. The photographer looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Maybe the sister could stand in the back," he suggested. "The lighting is better for the graduate in front." "That's fine," I said quietly, stepping behind Victoria. "Actually," Victoria turned around with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "could you hold my purse? This Hermes bag costs more than your entire outfit, and I don't want to set it down on the grass." My mother laughed. "Victoria, be nice to your sister." "I am being nice, Mom. I'm trusting her with a $15,000 handbag." Derek snorted. 15 grand? That's like, what, 6 months of Samantha's rent? "Try 12 months, Victoria corrected, causing another round of laughter from their circle. I felt heat rise in my cheeks but said nothing, dutifully holding the bag while they took dozens of photos. When it was time for a family photo, I was positioned so far to the side that I was practically cropped out of the frame. "Perfect," the photographer announced. "These will look amazing in Architectural Digest." "Architectural Digest?" I asked. "Oh, didn't we tell you?" my father said, not looking at me while adjusting his Italian silk tie. "Victoria and Derek are getting married next spring. Architectural Digest is doing a feature on the wedding venue, Derek's family estate. These graduation photos are part of the spread." "Congratulations," I managed, though Victoria had never mentioned an engagement to me. "Thanks," Victoria said dismissively. "Derek proposed last month. The ring is from Tiffany, 3 carats, naturally. Derek insisted on the best." She held up her hand, and the diamond caught the sunlight like a small star. Several nearby families stopped their own conversations to admire it. "It's beautiful," I said genuinely. "Of course it is. Unlike some people, I don't settle for mediocrity." Derek wrapped his arm around Victoria's waist. "That's right, babe. Only the finest for my future wife. Speaking of which, we should head to dinner. The reservation at Le Bernardin won't wait." Le Bernardin, the Michelin 3-star restaurant in San Francisco that had a 6-month waiting list and a $500 tasting menu. "Are you coming, Samantha?" my mother asked, though her tone suggested she was asking out of obligation rather than genuine desire for my company. I started to say yes, then realized I literally couldn't afford a meal there. My bank account had exactly $47 until my first paycheck from my new job at a small tech startup in Oakland. I actually have plans with some classmates. Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. Plans? What kind of plans could you possibly have that are more important than celebrating with family? Just dinner with friends. Let me guess. Pizza and cheap beer? How very you. Derek checked his gold Apple Watch. We really should go. The drive to the city is going to be brutal with this traffic. As they started walking toward the parking lot, I overheard Derek talking to my father about his new Tesla Model S Plaid and his plans to buy a vineyard in Sonoma. Victoria chimed in about her internship at her father's law firm, the one that had been magically created just for her, complete with a corner office and an assistant. "What about Samantha?" my mother asked as we reached the cars. "How is she getting home?" "Oh, she can take the bus," Victoria said carelessly. "She's used to public transportation." "The bus? From Berkeley to Oakland isn't that far," my father said, already climbing into his BMW X7. "Besides, it'll give her time to think about her future. Maybe she'll realize she needs to be more ambitious like her sister." "Dad," I said, "I already have a job lined up." "Right, it's some little startup no one's ever heard of. Victoria's going to be a partner at Williams Morrison and Associates by the time she's 30. Real success, not playing with computers in some garage." Victoria rolled down the window of Derek's Porsche 911. "Samantha, don't be jealous that some people are born winners. Maybe if you'd focused more on networking and less on those silly computer classes, you'd have better prospects." "My degree is in business administration and computer science," I said. "It's not silly." "Computer science," Derek laughed. "What are you going to do, fix people's Wi-Fi?" The circle of friends erupted in laughter. Even my parents smiled. "There's good money in IT support," my mother said condescendingly. "Very practical for someone with your limitations." "Limitations?" Victoria leaned out the window, her voice loud enough for nearby families to hear. "Oh, come on, Sam. We all know you're not exactly leadership material. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person. Some people are meant to follow, and some people are meant to lead." "Like you?" "Exactly like me. I mean, look at us." She gestured between herself and Derek. "We're going places. Big places. Derek's family has connections everywhere. Fortune 500 companies, political figures, celebrities. When we get married, I'll have access to circles you could never even dream of." A small crowd had gathered, pretending to take their own photos while obviously listening to our conversation. I could see some of my former classmates watching with a mixture of pity and second-hand embarrassment. "The thing is, Samantha," Victoria continued, her voice getting louder and more theatrical, "success isn't just about grades. It's about knowing the right people, having the right background, presenting yourself the right way, and let's be honest, you've never been good at any of that." "Victoria, that's enough," I said quietly. "Is it though? I mean, look at today. This was supposed to be a celebration. And you can't even afford a decent outfit or contribute to dinner. How are you going to succeed in the real world if you can't even handle graduation day?" Derek started the engine. "Babe, we really need to go." "You're right," Victoria said, then looked back at me one final time. "Samantha, I hope you figure things out. Really, I do. But until you do, maybe try not to embarrass the family name any more than you already have." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The Porsche pulled away with a roar, followed by my parents' BMW. I stood alone on the lawn, still holding Victoria's words like physical wounds. Around me, other families continued their celebrations, but I felt completely invisible. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How was graduation? Are you celebrating?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "It was perfect." As I walked toward the bus stop, I could hear whispers from other graduates and their families. "That's so sad. I can't believe her own sister. Did you hear what she said about computer classes? Poor girl." I kept walking, my rented graduation gown rustling in the evening breeze, carrying not just the sting of public humiliation, but something else. A quiet determination that none of them could see. Because there was something Victoria didn't know, something none of them knew. And tomorrow, everything is going to change. The Uber driver looked at me strangely when I gave him the address in Palo Alto. It was nearly midnight, and I was still wearing my wrinkled graduation gown, clutching a small duffel bag with everything I owned. "You sure about this address, miss? This is one of those neighborhoods." I knew exactly what kind of neighborhood it was. The kind where houses started at $20 million and tech billionaires were considered middle class. I'm sure. The drive from Berkeley took 45 minutes through winding roads, lined with towering redwoods and gates that probably cost more than most people's cars. When we finally pulled up to 1247 Hillcrest Drive, the driver whistled low. "Damn, you work here or something?" I stared up at the sprawling glass and steel mansion that seemed to glow from within, its infinity pool reflecting the stars. Something like that. The gate recognized my face before I even pressed the intercom button. It swung open silently, and I walked up the curved driveway past a collection of cars that belonged in a museum. A vintage Ferrari, a McLaren P1, a custom Bentley, and what looked like a prototype of something that wouldn't hit the market for another 5 years. The front door opened before I could knock. Samantha. The woman standing there was in her early 50s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Victoria's wedding dress would. But her eyes, warm, intelligent, and exactly the same shade of green as mine, held nothing but concern. "How did it go, sweetheart?" I collapsed into Eleanor Chen's arms, finally letting the tears I'd been holding back all day flow freely. "Oh, Mom," I whispered, "it was awful." Eleanor, my real mother, guided me into the marble foyer, past walls lined with original Picassos and Monets. We'd had this conversation many times over the past 4 years. The conversation about why I couldn't tell anyone who I really was. Why I had to pretend to be just another struggling college student, while my adoptive family treated me like their charity case. "Tell me everything," she said, leading me to the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Silicon Valley twinkling below us. I recounted the graduation ceremony, Victoria's performance, the photographer, the dinner I couldn't afford. Eleanor's expression grew darker with each detail. "And your adoptive parents, Robert and Patricia?" They acted like I was invisible. Again, I wiped my eyes with the tissue she handed me. "Mom, I know why we agreed to this arrangement, but I don't know how much more I can take." Eleanor sat back in her chair, and for a moment, she looked every inch the CEO of Chen Industries, one of the most powerful technology conglomerates in the world. The woman who had built a fortune that made the Williams family's wealth look like pocket change. "Do you remember why we set this up, Samantha?" Of course I remembered. When I was 14, Eleanor had received a credible kidnapping threat. The FBI had recommended that I be placed somewhere safe, somewhere no one would think to look for the daughter of Eleanor Chen. The Williams family, distant relatives who had no idea about Eleanor's true wealth, had agreed to take me in as their niece, whose parents had died in a car accident. They'd been told there was a modest trust fund for my care and education. What they didn't know was that Eleanor had been watching over me the entire time, ensuring I got into Berkeley, making sure I had what I needed to succeed academically, even if I couldn't live the life I was born into. "The arrangement was supposed to end after graduation," I said. "It is ending, tomorrow morning actually." Eleanor smiled, and suddenly she looked less like a CEO and more like the mother who used to read me bedtime stories. "That's why you're here tonight." We have some things to discuss before you start your new job. My new job at Dataflow Dynamics? Eleanor's smile widened. Oh, sweetheart. Dataflow Dynamics is one of our subsidiaries. A very small one, actually. We thought it would be a good place for you to start learning the business from the ground up. My mouth fell open. A subsidiary? Of Chen Industries? One of 300 companies we own worldwide. Your starting position is Junior Systems Analyst, reporting to Marcus Thompson, who reports to Jennifer Walsh, who reports to David Park, who eventually reports to me. I stared at her. So technically, everyone at Dataflow Dynamics works for you, including the CEO. Eleanor stood up and walked to a mahogany cabinet, returning with a thick manila folder. But that's not all we need to discuss. She opened the folder, revealing documents that made my head spin. Stock certificates, bank statements, legal papers with numbers that had so many zeros I lost count. When you turn 25 next month, you'll officially inherit 49% of Chen Industries. Until then, I've been managing your share and trust. But starting tomorrow, you'll begin taking on real responsibilities. Real responsibilities? Well, first, we're going to deal with the Williams family situation. They've been less than kind to you, and I don't appreciate that. Her voice took on an edge that I remembered from newspaper interviews where she'd destroyed competitors. But more importantly, you're going to start learning how to run an empire. She pulled out another document, a detailed organizational chart showing Chen Industries' complete structure. Companies I'd heard of my entire life, brands that were household names, tech innovations that had changed the world, all connected by lines leading back to one name at the top. Mom, this is overwhelming. I know it is. That's why we're taking it slowly. You'll work at Dataflow for a few months, learn how our smallest operations function. Then you'll rotate through different divisions: aerospace, renewable energy, biotechnology, real estate development. By the time you're 25, you'll understand every aspect of what you're inheriting. I looked around the living room, really seeing it for the first time. The art collection wasn't just expensive paintings. It was a museum-quality assemblage worth hundreds of millions. The nice view was a commanding perspective over the entire tech capital of the world. The comfortable house was a 30,000-square-foot architectural masterpiece. What about Victoria and my adoptive parents? They have no idea that their poor niece is actually heir to a fortune that makes their comfortable upper-middle-class life look quaint? Eleanor's expression hardened. No, they don't. And frankly, after today's performance, I'm not inclined to let them down easily. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. Security footage from the graduation ceremony, showing the entire humiliating encounter from multiple angles. You were watching? Sweetheart, I've had security teams watching over you for 4 years. I see everything. Her jaw tightened. And what I saw today was my daughter being treated like garbage by people who should have been protecting her. Mom, you don't need to. Oh, but I do. She closed the folder and looked at me with the kind of smile that had made Chen Industries' competitors very nervous over the years. Tomorrow, you start your new life, and the Williams family is going to learn exactly who they've been underestimating. What do you mean? Eleanor stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the valley where so many fortunes had been made and lost. Did you know that Robert Williams' law firm is currently struggling? They've been trying to land a major corporate client for months, something big enough to secure their partnership track and pay for Victoria's wedding. How do you know that? Because 3 days ago, Williams, Morrison & Associates submitted a proposal to handle the legal work for Chen Industries' West Coast expansion project. A project worth approximately $2 billion in legal fees over the next 5 years. My eyes widened. They applied to work for you? They applied to work for us, darling, and tomorrow morning they're going to meet with the decision maker for that contract. Eleanor turned back to me, her eyes sparkling with something that was part motherly pride and part strategic genius. Care to guess who that decision maker is? The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. Me? You're the incoming Director of Strategic Development for the West Coast Division. Your first official duty will be reviewing legal partnerships. She handed me another folder, this one containing a detailed proposal from Williams, Morrison & Associates. I believe you have some decisions to make about whether they meet our standards for professionalism and family values. I opened the proposal and saw my adoptive father's signature on the cover letter, along with a photo of the firm's dynamic young associates, including Victoria, posed in her corner office with her best "I'm destined for greatness" smile. Mom, this is justice? Poetic? Exactly what they deserve. Eleanor's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. All of the above, I think. She walked over to a wall safe, hidden behind a Rothko painting, and pulled out a sleek black business card holder. These are your new cards. You'll notice they don't say Chen anywhere on them. We thought Samantha Williams would be more appropriate for now, at least until people understand exactly who they're dealing with. I took one of the cards, heavy stock, embossed lettering, and absolutely nothing that would connect me to Eleanor Chen or the family fortune. Just Samantha Williams, Director of Strategic Development, Chen Industries West Coast Division. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Robert Williams and his partners will walk into the Data Flow Dynamics conference room, expecting to meet with some mid-level executive about a routine legal contract. Instead, they're going to find the young woman they've spent 4 years treating like she wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as their precious Victoria. I stared at the business card, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt and humiliation from the graduation ceremony was still there, but underneath it, something else was growing, something that felt a lot like power. What do I do? Eleanor sat back down beside me, and for a moment she was just my mother again, the woman who had made the hardest decision of her life to keep me safe, even if it meant watching strangers treat me badly for 4 years. You do what feels right, sweetheart, but remember, you're not their charity case anymore. You're not the girl who has to accept their scraps and smile gratefully. You're Samantha Chen Williams, and tomorrow, the world is going to start learning what that name really means. She squeezed my hand. The question is, are you ready? I looked out at Silicon Valley spread below us, then back at the business card in my hand. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably showing off her engagement ring at an expensive restaurant, completely unaware that her world was about to change. I'm ready, I said, and meant it. The Data Flow Dynamics building in downtown Oakland wasn't much to look at from the outside. A modest 12-story glass structure wedged between a coffee shop and a parking garage. Nothing like the gleaming Chen Industries headquarters in Palo Alto with its soaring architecture and Silicon Valley prestige. But that was exactly the point. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the Williams law firm meeting, wearing a charcoal gray business suit that Eleanor had custom-tailored for me overnight. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take when I approached. Good morning, Miss Williams. Mr. Thompson asked me to escort you directly to the executive floor. Marcus Thompson was waiting by the elevator. A man in his 40s with kind eyes and the slightly frazzled look of someone who'd just learned his new junior analyst was actually his ultimate boss. Miss Williams, he said, extending his hand, I have to admit, when I got the call from Eleanor Chen's office last night, I thought it was a prank. I imagine this is unusual. Unusual doesn't begin to cover it. He pressed the button for the 12th floor. In 15 years with the company, I've never had a direct conversation with anyone above Jennifer Walsh's level. Now I find out I'm about to work with Eleanor Chen's daughter. The elevator opened onto a floor I'd never seen before. Sleek offices with panoramic views of San Francisco Bay, conference rooms with walls of monitors displaying global market data, and workstations equipped with technology that looked like it belonged in a NASA control room. This doesn't look like the data flow dynamics I researched, I said. Marcus smiled. The first 3 floors are data flow dynamics, our legitimate small-scale data analytics business. Floors 4 through 12 are something else entirely. He led me down a hallway lined with photographs showing Eleanor at various tech conferences, shaking hands with world leaders, and accepting awards I'd never heard her mention. What exactly happens on floors 4 through 12? This is Chen Industries' West Coast Intelligence and Development Hub. We monitor emerging technologies, track competitors, identify acquisition targets, and manage strategic partnerships for the entire West Coast operation. He stopped at a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. And as of today, this is your office. The space was breathtaking, minimalist design with high-end furniture, multiple monitors displaying real-time data from Chen Industries subsidiaries, and a view that stretched from the Bay Bridge to the Golden Gate. On the desk was a single folder marked Williams, Morrison and Associates Partnership Evaluation. "I've taken the liberty of preparing a complete dossier on the law firm," Marcus said. "Their financial situation is more precarious than they're letting on. They've lost 3 major clients in the past 6 months, and their current accounts receivable suggests they're about 30 days from serious cash flow problems." I opened the folder and found detailed financial records, client lists, and internal communications that the Williams firm probably thought were confidential. "How did you get all this?" "Miss Williams, your mother owns controlling interests in half the companies in California. When someone wants to do business with us, we know everything about them before they walk through the door." Marcus pulled up a chair. "The question is, what do you want to know about your adoptive family that you don't already know?" He handed me a tablet showing a different kind of dossier. This one was about Robert and Patricia Williams personally, their mortgage payments, credit card debt, Victoria's college expenses, and Derek's family background. "Your adoptive father has been billing his personal expenses to the firm's account," Marcus said quietly. "Victoria's graduation photographer, her engagement party at the country club, even Derek's Tesla lease payments. The partners don't know yet, but they will when they review this quarter's finances." "What about Victoria herself?" Marcus swiped to another screen. "Her internship at Daddy's firm is unpaid, which she's been hiding from Derek's family. She's been using credit cards to maintain her lifestyle, assuming her parents will cover the bills. Current personal debt, $47,000. And Derek? Interesting situation there. His family's vineyard business is failing. They've been propped up by leveraged loans for the past 2 years. Derek's trust fund is mostly illiquid assets, real estate and wine inventory that can't be easily converted to cash." Marcus looked up from the tablet. "The lavish wedding they're planning? They can't actually afford it." I stared out the window at the morning commute, processing this information. Yesterday, Victoria had acted like she was living in a completely different universe from me. Today, I was learning that her universe was built on credit cards and borrowed time. "There's something else," Marcus said. "Derek's family has also applied to be suppliers for Chen Industries' hospitality division. Premium wines for our corporate events and executive dining facilities. It's a contract worth about $12 million annually. So I'll be deciding on both relationships today?" Among other things. He handed me another folder. "Jennifer Walsh asked me to brief you on 3 other partnership proposals that came in this week. A biotech firm in San Jose, a renewable energy company in Sacramento, and a logistics contractor in Fresno. All routine approvals, but she thought you should see how the process works." Marcus left me alone to review the files, and I spent the next hour learning more about California's business ecosystem than 4 years of college had taught me. Every contract, every partnership, every supplier relationship was connected to dozens of other businesses in an intricate web of mutual dependencies. At 8:45, Marcus returned with Jennifer Walsh, a sharp-looking woman in her 30s who moved with the confidence of someone used to making million-dollar decisions before lunch. "Miss Williams," Jennifer said, shaking my hand firmly, "I have to say I'm impressed by your academic record. Eleanor mentioned you graduated summa cum laude?" "Yesterday, actually." "Yesterday? And today you're evaluating partnership proposals worth hundreds of millions of dollars?" Jennifer's laugh was genuine. "I like your mother's approach to on-the-job training." "Is this really how business works? Everything seems so interconnected." "Welcome to the real world," Jennifer said. "Every decision we make ripples through the entire network. Approve the wrong partnership, and you could destabilize supply chains for dozens of other companies. Choose the right partners, and you create value for everyone involved." At 8:55, Marcus's phone buzzed. "They're here. 3 partners from Williams, Morrison and Associates, including Robert Williams." Jennifer checked her watch. 5 minutes early, that's either eager or desperate. "Based on their financial situation, I'd say desperate," Marcus replied. I looked at myself in the office's mirror, straightening my jacket and taking a deep breath. In 5 minutes, I would face the man who had spent 4 years treating me like an obligation he couldn't wait to discharge. "Are you ready for this?" Jennifer asked. Actually, I have a question first. What would happen if I rejected their proposal? They'd probably go out of business within 60 days, Marcus said matter-of-factly. This contract represents about 70% of their projected revenue for the next 2 years. And if I approved it, they'd become one of the most successful mid-sized law firms in Northern California. Robert Williams would probably make partner, Victoria would have her corner office secured, and Derek's family might even be able to save their vineyard business if we approved that contract too. Jennifer tilted her head. Is there something we should know about your relationship with this firm? I picked up the business card Eleanor had given me the night before, feeling its weight in my fingers. Through the conference room windows, I could see 3 men in expensive suits, setting up presentation materials, completely unaware that their financial future was about to be decided by the girl they'd dismissed as a failure less than 24 hours ago. Robert Williams and his wife adopted me when I was 14, I said quietly. They've been my legal guardians for 4 years. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged glances. And they don't know who you really are? Jennifer asked. They think I'm their poor niece whose parents died in a car accident. They've been told there's a modest trust fund covering my expenses, but they believe I'm essentially a charity case. I straightened my shoulders. Yesterday at my graduation, Robert's daughter Victoria made it very clear that she considers me an embarrassment to the family name. Oh, Marcus said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Jennifer smiled. The kind of smile I'd seen on Eleanor's face when she was about to make a move that would reshape entire industries. Miss Williams, she said, I think you're going to do just fine in this business. At exactly 9 a.m., we walked into the conference room where Robert Williams, his senior partner Harold Morrison, and a junior associate named Kevin Bradley were waiting. Robert wore his most expensive suit and his most confident smile, clearly expecting to impress whatever mid-level executive Chen Industries had sent to evaluate their firm. His smile faltered when he saw me. Samantha? He looked confused, then annoyed. What are you doing here? If you're looking for a job, this isn't the time. We're in an important business meeting. I took my seat at the head of the conference table, placing my business card in front of me where he could see it. Marcus and Jennifer flanked me on either side, their expressions professionally neutral. Good morning, Mr. Williams, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Thank you for coming in today to discuss your firm's proposal for the Chen Industries legal partnership. Robert's eyes went to my business card, then back to my face, then to Marcus and Jennifer, then back to the card. I watched the exact moment when the reality of the situation hit him. I don't understand, he said slowly. I'm Samantha Williams, Director of Strategic Development for Chen Industries West Coast Division. I'll be evaluating your firm's suitability for our legal partnership program. I opened the folder containing their proposal. Shall we begin? The silence in the conference room stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Robert Williams stared at my business card as if it were written in a foreign language, while his partners Harold Morrison and Kevin Bradley looked between us with growing confusion. There must be some mistake, Harold Morrison finally said, his silver mustache twitching nervously. We were told we'd be meeting with Chen Industries' legal partnership coordinator. You are, I replied calmly. That would be me. Robert's face had gone through several color changes. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and now something approaching panic. Samantha, this is ridiculous. You graduated yesterday. You can't possibly be. Mr. Williams, Jennifer Walsh interrupted smoothly, perhaps we should focus on your firm's proposal rather than questioning our personnel decisions. I opened the folder and pulled out the first page of their application. Williams, Morrison and Associates. Founded 1987. Specializing in corporate law and mergers and acquisitions. Current client base includes 15 active accounts with a combined portfolio value of... I paused, looking directly at Robert. Well, according to your financial statements, significantly less than what you reported last quarter. Kevin Bradley shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As the junior associate, he'd probably been the one tasked with preparing the financial documentation, and now he was watching it get dissected by someone who looked like she should still be studying for finals. Our finances are solid, Robert said, though his voice lacked conviction. We've had some minor fluctuations, but that's normal in this business. Marcus Thompson slid a tablet across the table. These are your actual numbers, Mr. Williams. Revenue down 37% year-over-year, accounts receivable at an all-time high, and some interesting irregularities in your expense reports. I watched Robert's face pale as he scrolled through the data. Information that should have been private, confidential, accessible only to his firm's partners, all laid out in precise detail on Chen Industries' proprietary analysis software. "How did you get this?" he whispered. "Mr. Williams," I said, leaning forward slightly, "when someone applies to work with Chen Industries, we conduct thorough due diligence. What we found raises some serious concerns about your firm's stability and ethical standards." Harold Morrison grabbed the tablet from Robert's shaking hands. His expression grew more grim with each swipe. "Robert, what is this? Personal expenses charged to the firm account? Country club memberships? Photography sessions?" "I can explain." "Can you?" I pulled out another document. "Because what I see here is a pattern of treating company resources as your personal piggy bank. Victoria's graduation photographer alone cost the firm $3,000. Her engagement party at Hillsborough Country Club, another $8,000. And this Tesla lease payment?" "That's Derek's car," Kevin Bradley said quietly, apparently putting pieces together. "But it's been charged to our transportation budget for 6 months." Jennifer Walsh made a note on her tablet. "Financial irregularities are typically grounds for immediate disqualification from our partnership program." "Wait," Robert said desperately. "Let me explain the situation. Samantha, you don't understand the pressures of running a law firm. Sometimes expenses get categorized incorrectly." "Mr. Williams," I interrupted, "I understand business expenses perfectly well. What I don't understand is how a firm that claims to specialize in corporate law can be so sloppy with its own corporate governance." Harold Morrison was still scrolling through the financial data, his face getting redder by the minute. "Robert, we need to discuss this privately. Kevin, step outside." "Actually," I said, "Mr. Bradley should stay. His work on the Chen Industries proposal was quite thorough, unlike some other aspects of your firm's operations." Kevin looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, but he remained seated. "Now then," I continued, "let's discuss your firm's qualifications. Mr. Morrison, your track record with merger and acquisition law is impressive. 23 successful deals over the past 5 years, including some complex multinational transactions." Harold straightened slightly, seeming to remember that this was supposed to be a business meeting rather than an intervention. "And Mr. Bradley, your research on Chen Industries' regulatory requirements was comprehensive. You clearly understand the complexity of our international operations." Kevin managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Miss Williams." "However," I said, turning my attention back to Robert, "I have concerns about the leadership and ethical standards of this firm. Chen Industries values integrity above all else. We need partners who share those values." Robert's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it reflexively. I caught a glimpse of the screen. A text from Victoria. "Dad, Derek's family wants to discuss wedding venue deposits today. Have you got the Chen Industries contract yet?" "Expecting good news?" I asked. Robert fumbled with his phone, nearly dropping it. It's nothing important." "Actually, that raises another point I wanted to discuss." I pulled out a different folder. "Your daughter Victoria's position at the firm. According to your organizational chart, she's listed as a senior associate, but according to your payroll records, she's never received a salary." She's learning the business," Robert stammered. "So she's an unpaid intern who you've been presenting to clients as a senior associate? That's interesting from a professional liability standpoint." Harold Morrison was now looking at Robert like he'd never seen him before. "Robert, we need to have a serious conversation about firm policies." My phone rang Eleanor's ringtone. I glanced at the screen and saw it was actually Victoria calling from Eleanor's phone, which meant she was at my real mother's house for some reason. "Excuse me for just a moment," I said, stepping out of the conference room. "Samantha!" Victoria's voice was shrill with panic. "Thank God you answered. I'm at Derek's family estate and something terrible has happened. There's been some kind of mistake with their wine supplier contract, and they're saying Chen Industries rejected their proposal. Derek's father is furious, and the wedding venue is demanding payment, and I don't know what to do." I could hear shouting in the background, male voices arguing about contracts and payments and family honor. "Where exactly are you, Victoria?" "The Blackstone Estate in Napa." Derek brought me here to meet with his father about wedding plans, but instead we walked into this nightmare. His dad is saying the wine business is ruined, and Derek is talking about calling off the wedding, and her voice cracked. "Samantha, I know we haven't always gotten along, but you understand business now, right? With your new job? Maybe you could ask around, see if there's anything that can be done. You want me to help you? I'm desperate, okay?" Derek's family is humiliated, and they're blaming me somehow, like it's my fault his father's business is failing. "Can you please just make some calls? See if anyone at your company knows anyone at Chen Industries?" I looked back through the conference room windows, where Robert was having what appeared to be an intense whispered argument with Harold Morrison, while Marcus and Jennifer waited patiently. "Victoria, I need you to do something for me first. Anything. Just please help us fix this. I need you to call Dad and tell him to be completely honest in his meeting today. No more hiding expenses, no more inflating numbers, no more using company money for personal items. If he wants any chance of saving his firm, he needs to come clean about everything." "What meeting? What are you talking about?" "Dad is meeting with Chen Industries right now about a legal partnership. If that falls through, his firm goes under in about a month." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Chen Industries?" Victoria finally whispered. "The Chen Industries? A tech company worth like $50 billion? That's the one. And they're meeting with Dad? Right now? Right now. Oh my God. Oh my God, Samantha, this changes everything. If Dad gets that contract, we can save Derek's family business too. Chen Industries probably has events that need wine suppliers, right? This could solve all our problems." I almost laughed at the irony. Victoria still had no idea she was talking to someone who could solve all her problems with a single phone call, or destroy her entire world just as easily. "Victoria, I want you to listen very carefully. Derek's family applied to be wine suppliers for Chen Industries' hospitality division. That contract is worth $12 million annually." $12 million? Are you serious?" "Dead serious. But here's the thing. Both contracts are being evaluated by the same person, Dad's legal partnership and Derek's wine supply deal. One person gets to decide whether your family's business survives and whether Derek's family keeps their estate." Who? Who has that kind of power? I looked back at the conference room, where Robert was now pacing nervously while Harold Morrison examined documents with the intensity of a forensic accountant. "Someone who remembers exactly how your family treated her at graduation yesterday," I said quietly. "Someone who heard every word about being an embarrassment and not being good enough and not understanding what real success looks like." The line went dead silent except for the sound of Victoria's breathing. "Samantha," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that karma has a funny way of working out, Victoria. And sometimes the people you dismiss as failures turn out to have more power than you ever imagined." I hung up the phone and walked back into the conference room, where three men were about to learn that their financial future depended entirely on the girl they'd never bothered to take seriously. "Gentlemen," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, "shall we continue our discussion about partnership standards and family values?" The tension in the conference room was suffocating. Robert Williams sat frozen in his chair, staring at me like I was a ghost that had just materialized from his worst nightmare. Harold Morrison was furiously scribbling notes on a legal pad, probably calculating how much money Robert's embezzlement had cost the firm. Kevin Bradley looked like he was praying for the floor to swallow him whole. "Miss Williams," Harold said carefully, "perhaps we could discuss this partnership proposal under different circumstances. It seems there are some internal matters we need to address first. Actually, Mr. Morrison, I think now is the perfect time to discuss partnership standards." I turned to face Robert directly. "Mr. Williams, yesterday at my graduation ceremony you made some interesting comments about success and leadership. Do you remember what you said?" Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Samantha, please." You said that success isn't just about grades, it's about knowing the right people, having the right background, presenting yourself the right way. I leaned forward. You said some people are meant to follow and some people are meant to lead. Which category did you put me in? This isn't appropriate, Harold Morrison interrupted. Whatever personal issues you have with Robert. Personal issues? Jennifer Walsh spoke up for the first time in several minutes. Mr. Morrison, are you suggesting that Chen Industries should ignore character assessments when evaluating potential partners? No, of course not, but… Because, from what I'm seeing, Marcus Thompson added, pulling up another screen on his tablet, character is exactly what's in question here. Mr. Williams, would you like to explain to your partners why you've been using firm resources to pay for your daughter's lifestyle while she accumulates personal debt she can't afford? Harold Morrison's pen snapped in his grip. What debt? I slid a printout across the table. Victoria Williams, credit card debt $47,000. Store credit accounts $12,000, personal loans $8,000, total $67,000 in unsecured debt on a salary of $0. $0? Kevin Bradley looked genuinely shocked, but she told clients she was a senior associate. She is a senior associate, Robert said desperately. She's working without compensation temporarily while she learns. While she learns to defraud clients about her qualifications? I asked. Mr. Morrison, are you aware that your firm has been billing clients for work performed by an unpaid intern who represents herself as a licensed attorney? The color drained from Harold Morrison's face. In California, that wasn't just unethical. It was grounds for disbarment. Harold, Robert pleaded, you have to understand. Victoria is very talented. She needs to not destroy our law licenses, Harold snapped. Robert, what have you done? My phone buzzed with a text message. Victoria again. Samantha, Derek's father just got off the phone with someone from Chen Industries. They're scheduling a meeting tomorrow morning to, quote, reconsider the wine contract. Please tell me you had something to do with this. The wedding is back on. I showed the message to Marcus, who smiled grimly. Interesting, Marcus said. It seems word is getting out about today's meeting. What do you mean? Robert asked. Jennifer Walsh consulted her tablet. The Blackstone Vineyard situation. Derek Patterson's family business. They're under the impression that their Chen Industries supplier contract might be reconsidered. Derek is Victoria's fiancé, I explained to Harold Morrison. His family's vineyard has been losing money for 2 years. They applied to supply wine for Chen Industries' corporate events. And? Harold asked, though he looked like he already dreaded the answer. And the same division that evaluates legal partnerships also handles supplier relationships. I pulled out another folder. Blackstone Vineyard. Premium wine supplier application. Contract value. $12 million annually for 5 years. Robert's eyes widened as he began to understand the scope of what was happening. The interesting thing about the Blackstone application, Marcus continued, is that it includes character references. One of those references is Robert Williams of Williams, Morrison & Associates, vouching for the Patterson family's integrity and business ethics. So let me understand this correctly, Jennifer said, her voice taking on the tone of a prosecutor presenting evidence. We have a law firm with questionable financial practices, led by a partner who embezzles company funds, employing his daughter as an unpaid intern who misrepresents herself to clients. And this same partner is vouching for the character of a wine supplier whose son is engaged to said daughter. It's all connected, Harold Morrison said quietly, the full picture finally becoming clear to him. Very connected, I agreed. Which brings us to the central question. Does Chen Industries want to do business with a network of partners who have demonstrated such flexible ethical standards? Robert finally found his voice. Samantha, I know you're angry about yesterday. Angry? I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Oakland's downtown skyline. Mr. Williams, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I turned back to face the room. I'm disappointed that a man who raised me for 4 years never bothered to learn who I really am. I'm disappointed that you and your wife spent so much energy teaching Victoria to look down on people that you forgot to teach her to look up to anything meaningful. Who you really are, Harold Morrison repeated. What does that mean? Marcus and Jennifer exchanged glances. This was the moment we'd all been building toward. Mr. Morrison, I said, walking back to my seat, how much do you know about Chen Industries' corporate structure? It's a privately held company, founded by Eleanor Chen in the 1990s. Started with software development, expanded into multiple sectors. Current estimated value is around $50 billion. Very good. And the ownership structure? Harold shrugged. Privately held by the Chen family, I assume. Specifically, 60% owned by Eleanor Chen and 40% held in trust for her heir. I sat down and placed my hands flat on the table. Her daughter. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the air conditioning humming in the vents. Her daughter, Robert repeated slowly. Eleanor Chen's daughter, who she placed with a safe family when she was 14 due to security concerns. A family named Williams who agreed to take in their niece, whose parents had supposedly died in a car accident. Kevin Bradley's mouth fell open. Harold Morrison's face went completely white. Robert Williams looked like he was having an out-of-body experience. You're, Harold whispered. Samantha Chen Williams. Eleanor Chen's daughter and heir to 40% of Chen Industries, which, as of my 25th birthday next month, makes me the second largest individual shareholder in a company worth $50 billion. Robert made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. The trust fund you thought was modest? I continued. It's currently worth about $20 billion. The poor niece you've been supporting? She's been living in a guest house while inheriting a global business empire. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward, which means, gentlemen, that the person evaluating your partnership proposal isn't just some mid-level executive. She's your boss's boss's boss. Oh, God, Robert whispered. Oh, my God. Yesterday at my graduation, I said, my voice steady and clear, your daughter Victoria announced to a crowd of people that I was an embarrassment to the family name. She said I would never understand real success. She said some people are meant to follow, and some are meant to lead. I stood up again, and this time all three men instinctively straightened in their chairs. She was right about one thing: some people are meant to lead. I picked up my business card and placed it in front of Robert. The question is, did she correctly identify which of us that was? Harold Morrison found his voice first. Miss Chen Williams. On behalf of Williams, Morrison and Associates, I want to formally apologize for any. Mr. Morrison, I interrupted, you have nothing to apologize for. Your work speaks for itself. Kevin's research was thorough and professional. You both conducted yourselves with integrity. But Robert, Harold started. Mr. Williams presents a different situation. I looked directly at my adoptive father, who appeared to be in shock. The question isn't whether his behavior disqualifies your firm from working with Chen Industries. The question is whether his behavior disqualifies him from remaining a partner in your firm. Samantha, Robert said, his voice barely audible, please, I never meant. What you meant, Mr. Williams, is irrelevant. What matters is what you did. And what you did was treat the daughter of your potential client like she wasn't worth the air she breathed. My phone rang. Eleanor's number. Excuse me, I said, stepping toward the window to take the call. Sweetheart, Eleanor's voice was warm but concerned. I just got a very interesting call from Victoria. She seems to think you might be able to help with some business problems she's having. She called you? She called the main Chen Industries number looking for Samantha Williams in Strategic Development. My assistant transferred her to me. Eleanor's tone shifted to something much more dangerous. She spent 10 minutes explaining how her poor sister had gotten some little job at a tech company and might be able to put in a good word with Chen Industries. I looked back at Robert, who was having what appeared to be a panic attack while Harold Morrison fanned him with a legal brief. She still doesn't know, I said. No, she doesn't. But I think it's time she learned, don't you? Through the conference room windows, I could see a black town car pulling up to the building's entrance. Victoria stepped out, followed by Derek Patterson and an older man who could only be Derek's father, the owner of the failing vineyard business. Mom, they're here. Perfect timing, Eleanor said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I think it's time for a family reunion. Victoria's heels clicked against the marble lobby floor 12 stories below as she made her way toward the elevators, completely unaware that she was walking into the most important meeting of her life. Through my office windows, I watched Derek Patterson adjust his tie nervously, while his father, a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that couldn't hide the desperation in his posture, checked his phone repeatedly. In the conference room behind me, Robert Williams had progressed from panic to what appeared to be the early stages of a complete breakdown. Harold Morrison was rapidly taking notes, probably calculating how to restructure the firm's partnership agreements, while Kevin Bradley sat in stunned silence. "Miss Chen Williams," Harold said carefully, "I need to ask directly, what are your intentions regarding our firm?" Before I could answer, Marcus Thompson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and nodded to me. "Building security. They're on their way up." "Perfect timing," I said, walking back to the conference table. "Gentlemen, we're about to have some additional participants in this discussion." "Additional participants?" Robert's voice cracked. "Your daughter Victoria, her fiancé Derek Patterson, and Derek's father Charles Patterson. They're here to discuss the Blackstone Vineyard contract." The blood drained completely from Robert's face. "Victoria's coming here? Now?" "She still believes she's asking for help from her, quote, poor sister who got lucky with a small tech job," I explained. "She has no idea she's about to walk into a meeting with the person who controls both her father's legal partnership and her fiancé's family business." Jennifer Walsh pulled up the Blackstone Vineyard file on her tablet. "Charles Patterson inherited the vineyard from his father in 1995, expanded aggressively in the early 2000s, leveraged heavily during the 2008 financial crisis. Current debt loads approximately $15 million against assets valued at $12 million. They're underwater," Marcus added. "The Chen Industries contract is literally their only hope of avoiding bankruptcy." "And Derek?" I asked. "Trust fund that's mostly tied up in the vineyard's assets. Personal liquid assets approximately $200,000, most of which is already committed to wedding expenses." Jennifer swiped to another screen. "Speaking of which, their wedding venue requires a $50,000 deposit by Friday, or they lose the booking." Robert made another choking sound. The elevator dinged in the hallway outside, followed by Victoria's voice carrying clearly through the office. "Excuse me? We're here to see Samantha Williams? She works in strategic development?" Marcus stepped out to greet them while I remained in the conference room with Robert, Harold, and Kevin. Through the glass walls, I could see Victoria striding confidently down the hallway, her designer outfit and perfect makeup suggesting someone who had never doubted that the world would bend to accommodate her needs. Derek followed behind her, looking considerably less confident. He'd probably spent the morning listening to his father explain exactly how dire their financial situation was. Charles Patterson brought up the rear, moving with the careful dignity of a man trying to maintain appearances while his world collapsed around him. "Samantha!" Victoria's voice rang out as Marcus led them into the main conference room. "Thank God you're here. I can't believe you actually work for Chen Industries. This is incredible timing." I stood up slowly, turning to face her. Victoria's smile faltered slightly when she saw my business suit and the formal conference room setting, but she quickly regained her composure. "Victoria," I said calmly. "Derek, Mr. Patterson, please have a seat." "Actually," Victoria said, glancing around the room and noticing her father for the first time, "Dad, what are you doing here?" Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Your father is here discussing a potential legal partnership with Chen Industries," I explained. "As are you apparently regarding the Blackstone Vineyard supplier contract." Charles Patterson stepped forward, extending his hand. "Miss Williams, I'm Charles Patterson. I want to thank you for agreeing to reconsider our application. My family has been in the wine business for 3 generations, and we—" "Mr. Patterson," I said, shaking his hand, "please sit down. We have quite a bit to discuss." Derek was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Sam, I appreciate you taking this meeting, but maybe there's been some confusion. We were told the Chen Industries contract was rejected." "It was," I said simply. "But then Victoria said you might be able to help, and someone from your company called this morning saying they wanted to meet, so we thought—" "You thought what, exactly?" Victoria jumped in, her voice taking on the patronizing tone I remembered so well. "Derek, let me handle this." Samantha, obviously there's been some kind of mix-up in your company's communications. The Patterson family runs one of Napa Valley's most prestigious vineyards. They're exactly the kind of high-quality supplier that Chen Industries should want to work with. Are they? I asked, pulling out the Blackstone Vineyard file. Because according to our financial analysis, they're about 3 months away from foreclosure. Charles Patterson's face went rigid. That information is confidential. Mr. Patterson, when you apply to work with Chen Industries, we conduct comprehensive due diligence. We know about the leveraged loans, the declining sales figures, and the fact that your vineyard's debt-to-asset ratio makes you a significant financial risk. Risk? Victoria's voice rose. Samantha, what are you talking about? The Patterson family is bankrupt, I said bluntly. Or they will be if they don't secure a major contract within the next 90 days. Derek slumped in his chair. Dad, you said the financial problems were temporary. They are temporary, Charles insisted, once we secure the right partnerships. Which brings us to the central issue, Jennifer Walsh interrupted, speaking for the first time since Victoria's arrival. Partnership requires trust, reliability, and shared values. Tell me, Miss Williams, what values does your family prioritize? Victoria looked confused by the question. Values? Well, success, obviously, excellence, achievement. And how do you define success, I asked. Results, winning, being the best. Victoria gestured around the conference room. I mean, look where we are. Chen Industries is one of the most successful companies in the world. That's the kind of success I'm talking about. Interesting, Marcus said. And what about treating people with respect, integrity? Recognizing talent regardless of someone's background? Of course those things matter, Victoria said defensively. But let's be realistic. Success is about results, not feelings. I walked to the head of the conference table and placed both hands on its surface. Victoria, yesterday at my graduation, you made some very specific statements about success and leadership. Do you remember what you said? What does that have to do with anything? You said that I would never understand real success because I wasn't, quote, leadership material. You said some people are meant to follow and some are meant to lead. You said I was an embarrassment to the family name. Victoria's face flushed. Samantha, I didn't mean... You also said that success isn't just about grades. It's about knowing the right people, having the right connections, presenting yourself the right way. I straightened up. So tell me, Victoria, which of us is presenting themselves the right way now? The confusion on Victoria's face was almost comical. She looked around the room, taking in the corporate setting, the expensive technology, the formal business atmosphere, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. I don't understand, she said slowly. Derek was staring at me with growing recognition. Samantha, what exactly is your job here? Before I could answer, the elevator dinged again in the hallway. Through the glass walls, I could see Eleanor Chen walking toward the conference room, flanked by 2 executives I didn't recognize. She moved with the kind of authority that made everyone in her path automatically step aside. That, I said, watching Eleanor approach, would be my mother. Victoria followed my gaze and saw Eleanor through the glass. Your mother? But that's... Eleanor Chen, I finished. Founder and CEO of Chen Industries. My biological mother, who placed me with the Williams family when I was 14 for security reasons. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like the entire building had stopped breathing. Derek was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. You're Eleanor Chen's daughter? I'm Samantha Chen Williams, heir to 40% of Chen Industries, and as of next month, I'll be the second largest shareholder in a company worth $50 billion. I looked directly at Victoria. I'm also the person who has final approval authority over both your father's legal partnership and your fiancé's family vineyard contract. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. That's impossible. Is it? You said yesterday that success is about knowing the right people, having the right connections. Well, Victoria, I know Eleanor Chen intimately. I've had dinner with her every Sunday for the past 4 years. I have her personal phone number memorized. She signs my birthday cards. Love, Mom. Eleanor entered the conference room at that moment, her presence immediately shifting the entire dynamic. Charles Patterson and Derek both stood automatically, the way people do when they recognize they're in the presence of true power. Good morning, everyone, Eleanor said, her voice warm but carrying an undertone of steel. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Mom, I said, I'd like you to meet the Williams family. And the Pattersons. Eleanor's smile was polite and completely terrifying. How wonderful! I've been so looking forward to meeting the people who raised my daughter. Victoria stared at Eleanor, then at me, then back at Eleanor, as if her brain was unable to process the information it was receiving. You're really her mother? Victoria whispered. I am indeed, Eleanor said, taking a seat at the conference table. And you must be Victoria. Samantha has told me so much about you. The way Eleanor said it made it clear that nothing Samantha had told her was particularly flattering. Now then, Eleanor continued, opening her briefcase and pulling out several folders. I understand we have some business to discuss. 2 contracts, actually. One for legal services, one for wine supply. Both require careful evaluation of our potential partner's character and values. She looked around the room, her gaze lingering on each person before continuing. So tell me, what kind of values should Chen Industries look for in its business partners? Eleanor's question hung in the air like a judge's gavel waiting to fall. The conference room had become a courtroom, and everyone present understood that the next few minutes would determine their futures. Victoria was still staring at Eleanor with the expression of someone who had just witnessed the laws of physics being rewritten. Derek had gone completely pale, his hand shaking as he processed the implications of everything he'd just learned. Charles Patterson sat ramrod straight, clinging to whatever dignity remained while his financial ruin became public knowledge. Robert Williams looked like he was having an out-of-body experience. Well, Eleanor prompted gently, what values should Chen Industries prioritize in its business partnerships? Harold Morrison cleared his throat. Integrity, Mrs. Chen. Transparency in financial dealings. Ethical treatment of employees and colleagues. Excellent answer, Mr. Morrison, Eleanor made a note in her folder. What else? Respect, Kevin Bradley said quietly, treating everyone with dignity regardless of their position or background. Very good, Mr. Bradley. Eleanor's smile was genuine when she looked at the young associate. Those are exactly the values Chen Industries was built on. She turned her attention to the Patterson family. Mr. Patterson, what values has your family business been built on? Charles straightened his shoulders. Hard work, Mrs. Chen. 3 generations of dedication to our craft. We've weathered economic downturns before, and we've always honored our commitments. I appreciate that, Mr. Patterson. Unfortunately, financial hardship doesn't excuse some of the choices your family has made. Eleanor opened another folder. Derek, would you like to explain to everyone why you thought it was appropriate to lease a Tesla using your girlfriend's father's company credit? Derek's face went from pale to green. That wasn't. Victoria said her dad approved it for business purposes. Business purposes? Eleanor's eyebrow arched. What business does a wine supplier's son have with a law firm's transportation budget? Victoria said. Derek looked around the room desperately. She said her family had money, that a few $1,000s here and there didn't matter. A few $1,000s? Harold Morrison's voice was sharp. Derek, that Tesla lease is costing the firm $1,800 a month. For the past 8 months. Victoria finally found her voice. That's not that much money. For whom? I asked. For your father's struggling law firm? For Derek's bankrupt vineyard family? Or for the $20 billion trust fund you didn't know existed? Eleanor studied Victoria with the kind of clinical assessment she usually reserved for hostile takeovers. Victoria, yesterday at my daughter's graduation, you made some very specific statements. You said Samantha would never understand real success. You called her an embarrassment to the family name. You suggested she take the bus home while you went to an expensive restaurant. I didn't mean. What you meant is irrelevant, Eleanor said, her voice taking on the tone that had made her one of the most feared CEOs in Silicon Valley. What matters is what you did. You humiliated my daughter in public. You treated her like she was beneath your notice. You used her adoptive father's resources to fund your lifestyle while dismissing her achievements. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but Eleanor wasn't finished. More importantly, you revealed your true character. When you thought Samantha had no power, no connections, no ability to help or hurt you, you treated her with contempt. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. I watched Victoria crumble in real time. The confidence, the arrogance, the sense of superiority that had defined her for as long as I'd known her, all of it evaporating as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. "Mrs. Chen," Derek said desperately, "please, Victoria didn't know." "Mr. Patterson, that's exactly the point. Victoria didn't know who she was talking to, so she felt free to be cruel. But character isn't about how you treat people who can help you. It's about how you treat people who can't." Eleanor turned to me. "Samantha, these are your decisions to make. What are your recommendations regarding these partnership proposals?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over Oakland's skyline one more time. 24 hours ago, I had been standing on Berkeley's campus, humiliated and alone, watching my adoptive family drive away in expensive cars. Now I held their entire future in my hands. "Harold Morrison," I said, turning back to the room. "Williams, Morrison and Associates will be restructured. The firm will be renamed Morrison, Bradley and Associates. Robert Williams will be removed as a partner, and his shares will be distributed between Harold Morrison and Kevin Bradley." Harold nodded grimly. "That's fair." "The legal partnership with Chen Industries will proceed under the new structure. Harold will serve as senior partner, Kevin will be promoted to associate partner, and you'll hire 2 additional associates within 6 months." "And Robert?" Harold asked. I looked at my adoptive father, who was slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. "Robert Williams will make full restitution for all personal expenses charged to the firm. He'll also face a formal ethics review with the California State Bar. After that..." I paused. "After that, he's welcome to apply for a position as a junior associate with the new firm, assuming he passes the ethics review." Robert's head snapped up. You're giving me a second chance?" "I'm giving you the opportunity to earn a second chance," I corrected. "Whether you take it is up to you." Eleanor smiled at my decision. She understood that complete destruction wasn't justice. It was just revenge. I turned to the Patterson family. "Charles Patterson, Blackstone Vineyards supplier application is approved." Derek's face lit up with hope, but I held up my hand. "However, there are conditions. First, you'll accept a payment schedule that allows you to get current on your debts over 18 months, rather than demanding immediate cash flow relief. Second, Derek will work full-time at the vineyard for the next 2 years, learning the business from the ground up instead of relying on his trust fund." "Of course," Charles said quickly, "whatever you require." "And third," I continued, looking directly at Derek, "you'll repay every penny that was charged to Williams, Morrison and Associates for your personal expenses." "With interest?" Derek nodded frantically. "Yes, absolutely." "Good. The Chen Industries contract will give your family the financial stability to rebuild properly. But Derek?" I waited until he met my eyes. "If I ever hear about you taking advantage of someone else's resources again, the contract gets canceled immediately." "Understood." That left Victoria. She sat in her chair, tears streaming down her face, probably calculating how drastically her life was about to change. No more unlimited credit cards. No more expensive dinners on Daddy's business account. No more corner office at a prestigious law firm. "Victoria," I said gently, "you're going to resign from your position at your father's firm." "I understand," she whispered. "But," I continued, "Chen Industries has an entry-level marketing position at our Palo Alto headquarters. The salary is $60,000 a year, enough to live on if you budget carefully and start paying down your debt." Victoria looked up at me in shock. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you the same thing I offered your father, a chance to earn a second chance. The position reports to our VP of Marketing, who happens to value hard work over connections. If you prove yourself there, there's room for advancement." Eleanor was watching this exchange with interest. She'd probably expected me to be harsher with Victoria. "Why?" Victoria asked. "After everything I said, everything I did, why would you help me?" I walked over to her chair and crouched down so we were at eye level. "Because 4 years ago, Eleanor Chen made the hardest decision of her life. She gave up raising her daughter to keep her safe. Robert and Patricia Williams took in a stranger's child and treated her like family. Not perfectly, but they tried. I glanced at Robert, who was crying openly now. And because yesterday, when I was standing alone on that lawn feeling completely defeated, I made myself a promise. I promised that when I had power, I would use it differently than you did. I would use it to lift people up, not tear them down. Victoria broke down completely then, sobbing in a way that seemed to come from her very soul. "I'm so sorry," she gasped. "Samantha, I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. I was selfish and cruel and—" "Victoria," I said firmly, "apologies are just words. What matters now is what you do next." Eleanor stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. "Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we have everything we need. Harold, Kevin, I look forward to working with your firm. Charles, Derek, welcome to the Chen Industries family." As everyone began gathering their papers and preparing to leave, Eleanor pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "What you did just now, showing mercy while maintaining justice, that's real leadership." "I learned from the best," I said, hugging her. "Actually," Eleanor smiled, "I think you taught yourself that. I would have been much harsher." I was standing in the same conference room, looking out at the same view of Oakland's skyline. But everything else had changed. Morrison, Bradley & Associates had become one of the most respected mid-sized law firms in Northern California. Harold Morrison had proven to be an exceptional leader, and Kevin Bradley had grown into his new role with remarkable skill. Robert Williams was working as a junior associate, slowly rebuilding his reputation and his relationship with his family. Blackstone Vineyard had not only avoided bankruptcy, but had become one of Chen Industries' most reliable suppliers. Derek had discovered he actually enjoyed working with his hands and learning the wine business from his father. More importantly, he'd become a different person, humbler, more appreciative, more aware of how his actions affected others. Victoria was the biggest surprise of all. The entry-level marketing job had stripped away all her pretenses and forced her to prove herself based on merit alone. It turned out that underneath all the arrogance and entitlement, she was actually quite talented. More importantly, she was finally learning what real success looked like. She'd also moved into a modest apartment in Palo Alto, was paying down her debt on a strict budget, and had started volunteering at a literacy program on weekends. When I asked her about volunteering, she'd said simply, "I want to learn how to help people instead of just using them." As for me, I was no longer hiding who I was. The business world had quickly learned that Samantha Chen Williams wasn't just Eleanor Chen's daughter. She was a force to be reckoned with in her own right. But more importantly, I'd learned that real power isn't about humiliating the people who wronged you. Real power is about transforming them. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Family dinner this Sunday? Derek's bringing wine from the vineyard, and Dad wants to show you his latest case briefing. He's actually pretty good at this junior associate thing." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Because in the end, that's what family does. We give each other second chances, we help each other grow, and sometimes, if we're really lucky, we get to watch each other become the people we were always meant to be. Even if it takes a graduation day humiliation and a Fortune 500 CEO calling you boss to get there. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.